Hi and welcome to podcast 22 on Football-Oranje. If you're new, we hope you'll stick around to hear us talk extensively on the Eredivisie, including an interesting Twitter poll result we put out, and we'll answer your questions. Thank you for joining us today on our podcast, and thank you if you're one of the growing audience that are tuning into our podcast every week. On YouTube, SoundCloud and iTunes combined, we have been hitting like over 600, 700 listens regularly, so all thanks to you. Please continue to like, share and subscribe wherever you're listening to show us your support. Today, I, Michael Statham, am joined by regular Football-Oranje writer and podcaster James Rowe.
Hello.
And yet another special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Frank Wielaard. I'm a sports commentator for the NOS Radio and Television, which is kind of like the BBC in England, only way smaller than that, but it works in a similar way. I usually comment on football matches in the Eredivisie or in European matches on TV or as well radio.
Awesome. Well, Frank, James, we have been witnessing an interesting week for Feyenoord this week. They lost 4-0 at home to Manchester City in the Champions League, and then follow that up with a painful defeat away at PSV. So it's been an enormous week for them, but they've lost two crucial games. Frank, what do you think of their week, and do you think this will set a tone for their season? Do you think it's going to be a bigger battle than we expected in the Eredivisie and the Champions League?
Well, in the Champions League, they should have expected a really big battle, because the opponents they got, and I don't think they really expect to go on in the Champions League anywhere, because the other teams are normally way better than Feyenoord is. And in the National League, they expect to be running for the championship. And they still will after they lost 1-0 against PSV, because they should have played one each. Only they didn't, because they didn't score the goal they had to score.
I think it's a damaging week for them to be beaten by so handsomely by Manchester City, and obviously losing in Eindhoven. I think they went with aspirations to win the game in Eindhoven, but I think it's a timely win for PSV in that respect. But it's a very long season, and they still have a chance to retain the title. They'll still be in the mix to win the title. There's no doubt about that. But I think they would have hoped to kick off their Champions League campaign with a more positive result, and especially in terms of goals conceded. But
James, there's been a bit of news this week that Feyenoord fans are not allowed to travel to Naples for the next Champions League game. Do you think that's going to have a big effect on them?
Yes, I do. I actually coincidentally read on the I have the NOS app on my iPad, and I read last night the
very good.
Yes, I read last night whilst relaxing at home that the news coming out that only a small group of the club, in terms of representatives and people behind the scenes, will travel with the squad to Naples. But the fans will not be allowed to attend, which is a big shame, because obviously with what happened with Feyenoord when they last visited Italy, when they played in Rome a few years ago, and there was ugly scenes in terms of damage caused to special monuments and being a little bit overzealous. I think that's been taken into consideration. But it's also a shame for the club to work so hard and to achieve Champions League football, and for the Feyenoord supporter who's extremely passionate, who wants to attend European games, not just in the Netherlands but also abroad, an opportunity is taken away from them, which is a bit of a shame, because maybe they harboured ambitions of visiting major cities in Europe and beautiful stadiums. And in the case of a very passionate crowd at the Sao Paulo in Naples, which has a decent reputation, they unfortunately will not be able to attend.
Yeah, it's a great shame that the fans can't go, because it also puts them in a more dangerous predicament in terms of qualifying for the next stage, whether that's Champions League or Europa League, because they've lost 4-0 at home to Man City, and now a very tough game away at Napoli. It doesn't set good confidence for the remaining 4 games in which they'll have to get at least 6 points to finish third, for example, and it puts a lot of pressure on the team. In the league as well.
Yeah, but I think.
Go ahead.
I think it's not very personal against Feyenoord because Napoli played Nice as well in the Champions League pre-round, and Nice couldn't bring any supporters as well. So you should expect for Manchester City fans and for Shakhtar fans not to be able to come to Naples as well. It has got something to do, I expect, with the Feyenoord fans, the way they behaved in Rome a couple of years ago. But it's not especially for them because Napoli have done it before, and they will do it. I think they will do it again.
In the league as well, like they've lost away at PSV, and I did not think that PSV at all deserved that win. That there was a lot of second balls being lost in midfield. They didn't impose themselves upon the champions, and I just thought that there was a lot of quality missing from PSV, which really shocked me. But I suppose the Herving Lozano being missed didn't help. But yeah, no, I thought Feyenoord should have got something out of it, but they need to be better taking their chances. Perhaps they missed Nikolaj Jorgensen.
I think PSV started the game very well. They scored a goal really quick, and Feyenoord was all over the place. They couldn't cope with PSV the way they played. They were way too fast for them. They couldn't get any pressure on the ball, and PSV should have scored more goals before the end of the first half. And Feyenoord got into the game slowly, but they did. And after they got to 10 men and the second half, then PSV started to doubting themselves. Are we going to score 2 or are we going to settle for 1? And they did the last thing, and Feyenoord picked up very good after the break and got a lot of chances. They should have scored, but in the first half they were nowhere. So I think 1 each was a very good result for both of them. But that Feyenoord didn't get it was their own problem, their own fault.
I think Jeroen Soet made 2 crucial saves to deny Toornstra and Botteghin, and that proved timely. I think it's an important win for PSV. I think to relieve the pressure after a difficult start to the season, especially failing to qualify for Europe. And I think a win against a major rival in a domestic sense can only help them as they go forward.
I still think it's going to be a massively difficult season for them. I still am very concerned from what I've seen so far from PSV. They don't seem the same assertive team that they used to be. They play much better on the counter-attack. That's why it's a shame they didn't get through in Europe, because they've been playing teams of a decent calibre to use a counter-attack. But now they can't do that in the league, and I just think it's going to cost them in a lot of games. They play with Utrecht next away, and I think it's going to be a similar problem where Utrecht might try and sit back and try and counter PSV to try and play against what PSV don't like.
I don't think that. I think Utrecht will play their own game, and PSV might hope to go into counter-attack because when they have the ball, they're not good enough. I agree with you on that. But I think Utrecht is a very big problem for any club in the Eredivisie because the way they play is slightly different than everybody else. And it's been a problem for a year and a half already for every other club. And that continues to be because Utrecht is getting better. And they had a surprise big loss against Twente last weekend. But, well, they have that every now and again because they're Utrecht. They're not that good that they can beat everybody. But they can make problems for the top 3 any day.
Yeah, and I think Erik ten Hag is really going to sort that out this week. I really think that the look on his face when they're 4-0 down told its own story. And I just think that he's going to get them on the training grounds and it will be a completely different display against PSV.
Yeah, he's a very sore loser.
Well, fellow challengers Ajax play Vitesse, and this game for me will be game of the weekend because you're looking at 2 teams that like to attack, but whether Vitesse going to come with a different approach this weekend is a debate altogether. And I just want to get your guys' opinion on whether you think Vitesse have got the strength this season to really challenge these big teams, and have they really got the ability to defend against Ajax and keep a clean sheet, and because Ajax have got some fantastic attacking players despite their poor form.
If you ask me, I think Vitesse can be good enough for top 5, and they can cause problems for the top 3 in the Netherlands, for Ajax, PSV and Feyenoord for this season. But they have a very good striker in Matafs. He's quite prolific so far, and well, the rest of the team, they're acting quite good as a team. But there's a slight problem in Arnhem right now because in the organization there's some people that really want to get involved in who is playing and who is not playing, and they're really getting on the nerves of the head coach. And well, he has a problem with that, and we'll see how that continues for the rest of the season, because that will be a big problem. Not maybe against Ajax, because against the top team, against Ajax, every other team will be trying his best to get a good result, and Vitesse will make Ajax really work hard for their points.
I agree with Frank. I can definitely see Vitesse finishing in the top 5. I think personally they've responded really well in terms of losing Lewis Baker and Ricky van Wolfswinkel from last season. I think it's disappointing for them to have drawn at home to VVV Venlo, but by the same token, a great result for VVV last Sunday. Be interesting to see how much the Europa League takes out of Vitesse, because I think it cost them an awful lot of energy to stand toe to toe with Lazio, and they were unlucky and ended up losing 3-2. I think they'll consolidate in the top 5, but I think it's unlikely that they will push for the top 3.
About Vitesse, I thought their performance against Lazio was excellent. It's a shame that they had those 2 defensive lapses that cost them the win, and they could have easily put Lazio away with further chances. But doesn't that show you the Dutch teams at the moment in Europe? We always seem to bring this up in our podcast, but it is such a big issue that, for example, Vitesse there should have beat Lazio but still couldn't. Is that a style of play issue?
I think it's, well, Lazio can bring on Immobile, and Vitesse already have their best striker on the pitch. Because so if Lazio is in trouble, they didn't start their best players, and when they were in trouble, they started bringing on their best players, and then Vitesse was in trouble every time. Lazio put some extra effort in, they scored a goal, and Vitesse made big mistakes right at that time in that game. So mostly from the same player, mostly from Van der Werf. So that's a problem. You know, you don't have 11 players who can cope with a team like Lazio, not even when they're not at their best. And Vitesse will have to try to get the best results possible. It's a very good learning experience for them, but to expect them to get into the knockout phase, well, I don't know. It would be great if they could, but I don't know. They have had a big lesson, and they can use that against Ajax, I think.
I think just a final point for Vitesse. Players like Milo Rashica love playing against the big teams, and I think he's going to play a big part at Ajax on Saturday. I believe it's Saturday. Sunday. Cheers. And yeah, I think their best players come to the fore, and they're the top goal scorers actually in the division at the moment, tied with Feyenoord, and they've just got more goals than them, and that really helps them, particularly in home matches. And I think that this season it's going to make a difference with them scoring those extra goals at home to win those games, you know, sort of 3-1, 4-1, as opposed to the slim victories they had last season. I think in 2016 they only won 3 games at home all year, but 2017 they already have 8 victories now. They didn't beat VVV, and that was actually quite shocking for me that they didn't, but perhaps that's, as James said, the Europa League's taking its toll. But I really think Vitesse have got that capability to break for top 3, and I think they can even pass PSV. Perhaps if Ajax are in trouble this season, if they can get a victory away at Ajax, who knows?
I don't think they will finish in the top 3. They will have a good season in the Eredivisie, but the top 3 is stronger than they are, more consistent than they are. But they will give them a lot of trouble and you named a few players. I can add to them Serrero, a controller in midfield, who's had a very good start at Vitesse. And if he continues to do that, then Vitesse will be good, but they will still be top 5, not top 3.
It is a big ask. I do realise that, and after last season as well, where all top 3 were winning again and again and again, and it was 6 in a row, 7 in a row, and a team like Vitesse would find that particularly difficult, especially since they're in Europe, and Ajax and PSV are not. I did put a poll on the Twitter page, and I was asking which Eredivisie side is most likely to break into a top 3, but the followers didn't pick Vitesse. They went with RZ over Vitesse, Utrecht and Heerenveen. Why do you think people are most likely to pick RZ?
Because there's more football in AZ than there's in Vitesse. Vitesse is very good organized. They have good players, can get their moments, but AZ can get a lot more moments during a game because they have a very good attacking game, very quick, very good players, young players. It's a team people favor because they like the way they play. They have Van Overheem, who has a very good one-touch game. He does that very often, which makes their attack very quick, and he's always involved. And they have a striker who can score 20 if he wants to. And they have young players who add a lot of nice things to AZ, and they have a very good youth academy. People like that, the way the AZ is coming up. They had big problems a few years ago with money, and now they're back, and they're very, very good. They might end up 4th. I don't think they will be in the top 3 either.
Yeah, James, and you were saying that John de Van den Brom was under pressure this season to deliver, and I was with you on that. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think they've had a great start, and I think what they're doing is they're really reaping the benefits of the money they invested in their youth policy, of their training complex in terms of putting things in place to get the players prepared as best as possible. And I have stated before that my jury is very much out on John van der Brom, but they've had a fantastic start, and that can only bode well for the future. I think it's an important year for Van der Brom. It's an important year for AZ, and be interesting to see how they get on over the course of the season.
Yeah, especially players such as Alireza Jahanbakhsh, who probably should have left the club last summer, but he decided to continue his development with AZ. Just a final note on this poll, Heerenveen were also there and got some votes. They've made a very good start to the season, but I guess their problem might lie with the centre-back Kikpiri, who's only 17. He's done fantastically well, but yeah, it's a tough start for him to get into the team and to really, to get that consistency for the length of the season. But then you can't deny they've got some very good attacking players. Martin Odegaard, he's coming back into people's attention again because of the sparkling performances he's been having. And Morten Thorsby, for example, I was a big fan of his last season, but felt like he needs to add more to his game. He's a very workmanlike kind of player, but so far this season he's been a lot more industrious in helping actually build the play, and he's always a threat in that penalty area, especially with his height. Do you guys think that Jürgen Streppel's done a good job this season so far?
Yes. I stated before on the podcast that I believe Jürgen Streppel to be quite underrated. When he was previously at Willem II, he had them playing some fantastic football at times. And when things were going awry for Van Bronckhorst when he started out at Feyenoord, Streppel was once considered as potential candidate to succeed him. But I think it's been a slow start for Streppel to get things in place. He stated himself after in his press conference after the win at the weekend, but it takes time to build a squad. It takes time to put things in place, and they have some great players in Lucas Boudenberg and Arbus-Sinelli, and also for the readers as well. I'm currently in negotiations with FC Heerenveen to interview Kikpiri in October time. So fingers crossed that will go through okay.
I think Heerenveen has had a very good start. They played a very good first half last year, but then had a very big downfall in the second half of the season. And I think the same thing could happen to Heerenveen this year because they have Streppel as a coach, who is a very good coach, but his training ability of the team, the way they have to play and to know what they have to do in certain situations, I hear that's not very good. But he's a very good people manager. He can do that very well, and that works for a while. But if things go wrong, then last year he showed he couldn't turn that around. With the good players he still had, he couldn't do anything about it. And so that's a big problem for Heerenveen. That could still happen this year. They can have a great year all year, but somewhere they will have a downfall, and then it will be the question how long it will take that downfall. If it will be the rest of the season or will it be a couple of weeks? And that will be very important for the result at the end. That's why I think they will not be in the top 5 normally. They will be maybe top 8, top 7.
Yeah, I have to agree with that actually. It's a little fake the start to the season because I still think the defence isn't as strong as it looks. In late in games they come under a lot of pressure, and they often rely on luck to deal with that. And I don't think Streppel is good at adapting tactics for the situation of the match. And I agree with what you say, Frank. That hearsay actually seems to match what I think. Now we've got 5 questions in, and I'd just like to finish the podcast with that this week. The first one I'll pick is to do the Eredivisie. So to spin it on its head a little bit, let's look at the bottom of the table. Housemaster asks, what are the chances of Willem II staying up? Frank, would you like to answer that one?
They'll have a very hard time to be out of the last 3. But maybe they can handle that. Well, they have a lot of competition there. Rowe will be in very big trouble this season, I guess. I think Twente is very low right now, but they will get up faster. NAC is down there and can pretty much stay there. ADO will be up more, and Excelsior and maybe Sparta will be in trouble. So they will have to beat Roda, Excelsior, Sparta, NAC, I guess. And that will be very, very hard. They have a very good striker, or the Spanish guy is very good, Fran Sol. If they can get 15 or 20 goals out of him, they will end up 15, I guess.
I'm confident they'll stay up. I don't think Willem II will go down. I think, like Frank said, with Fran Sol, with Daniel Crowley, with the Nigerian as well, Ogbechi.
He's always injured, huh?
Yeah. But he's still a good player, though.
Yeah.
I stated before that Eredivisie will definitely struggle. I've never been completely convinced with Sparta in the Eredivisie under Alex Pastoor, and possibly Excelsior in the mix as well. So I can't personally see Willem II getting relegated this season.
Yeah, I think there's a few teams that are far weaker than them, as it tends to be in the Eredivisie. There's always those teams that are just that too weak for the division. Roda are definitely one of them. I think Excelsior will always be down there, and yeah, as you guys say, Sparta, not convinced that they have the genuine individual quality to stay out of the bottom 3. Willem II have got enough. They've got some decent players. They've got some decent midfielders that just need that time to gel, and Fran Sol, yeah, and if him and Velakonya can strike a partnership, which did very well against Roda, then they'll have no trouble. Let's go for this. It does spin a little bit off the Eredivisie after this question, but this one's from Tom. He asks, who the best non-Dutch players are in the Eredivisie? Yeah, that's a big question. Who would like to answer that one?
I guess you have to be in the top 3 for that.
Yep.
So Feyenoord has Jurgensen, who's very good. But they have El Abadi, who's actually Dutch, but he is a Moroccan football nationality. He's very good. PSV has Lozano, I think, who is by far the best foreign player. And Ajax have a lot, actually. They have Younes, they have Dolberg, that are very good foreign players.
Yeah, and none of the. Go on, James.
Yeah, I think that the usual suspects are there. If you went a little bit further down, you could say about you mentioned Janak Shabar at RZ and Arbasinelli at Vane. If you looked into those two, apart from if you wanted to go outside the usual suspects, but in terms of the high quality, you're looking at Hakim Ziyech and Jorgensen.
Yeah, for me, Hakim Ziyech is by far the best quality player in the Eredivisie, Dutch, non-Dutch. Excellent footballer. Still don't know why he doesn't get a massive move abroad. I still, to this day, can't figure out why he left Twente so late and Ajax had to sign him so late in the transfer window a couple of years ago. Yeah, and I think we'll go into the next question. And now James will love this one, as he knows quite a bit about Frank de Boer. He's appeared in Talksport just to talk all about him. JD asks, what's next for Frank de Boer?
I think a long break first and foremost. I can't see him jumping in anywhere in particular in the short term. No doubt he will be brought into contention for the national team job once the qualification cycle is finished. But I just hope he learns from his mistakes. He's had his fingers burnt twice with stints at a major European club in Inter Milan, which only lasted 85 days, and an established Premier League club in Crystal Palace, which only lasted 77 days. And you would hope that he would learn from his experiences, where not to be too hasty and to be extremely choosy in his next venture. When he was an analyst for European games with Ajax last season, he was often pillared and questioned by many hosts, and when presenting games live, about what his next step will be, where would he go, where would he want to go, and he was always having to dumb down a bit and to say that he was going to take his time and be really choosy. And but you also can't blame him for choosing a Premier League job, because you don't know if that opportunity is ever going to arise again in the future. So you can understand why he's took it. But I think what's in store for him is a long break, and then I think he may well be brought into contention to the national team once the qualification cycle is finished.
I think Frank de Boer has made two poor choices so far, and everybody knows it. So he will have a long break. As I think I can agree with that, and I can agree with him being or doing something at the National Football Association after this as well. But I don't know if he will be our national team coach or the next one. I think that it will be something smaller, or he will be a club coach somewhere way smaller than he thought before. He could go to Crystal Palace. He should have gone maybe to Liverpool, but he didn't, and now he's stuck. He made two big mistakes, very short breaks, and now he's in trouble. I think he will be at the National Team Association as well, and where he goes from there, well, I don't know any club who would pick him up very soon.
Yeah, I think he's more likely to go into a more low-risk situation, or somewhere where he'll be wanted, such as a Dutch national team manager. I hope not. I don't think he's got the capabilities just yet for that kind of job, and he's more likely to end up back in the Netherlands, or perhaps at a team. Found an example such as Celtic, where he's not as much under pressure to deliver results, because at Celtic you're going to win a lot of games, that sort of job. I think our next question. Okay, let's talk about this one. This here asks, what is the Netherlands starting 11 at this point, as we're talking about De Boer? I think a better question here would perhaps be, will there be any major changes come the next game in October?
I think there will not be very many changes, because the pre-selection is pretty much the same, and there's a few players added to it, because there's a lot of players who don't play at their club, and who are slightly injured or not fit yet. So the only thing I can imagine that will really change is that Advocaat will choose players who are fit and who are playing regularly at their club. So he has no problems with that during the game. But in other ways, that's the only reason I think he will change in the starting 11. And who those players will be, I don't think it will be, for example, it will be Sillissen, because out of the goalkeepers he selected, he's by far the best, I guess.
I think it will be similar to the starting lineups which were picked for Bulgaria and France. I think after the game against Belarus and what plays out with Sweden against Luxembourg, going into the final match at home to Sweden, and potential scenarios with goal difference, with points and that kind of thing. I think we'll see similar starting lineups and a tried and tested method.
I think goals are needed though, and I could probably even predict a surprise start for Klaas-Jan Huntelaar against Belarus, where goals are needed to try and break that goal difference barrier with Sweden. But I guess let's not depress ourselves too much with upcoming games, because it's going to be very tough for qualification to happen. It could even be that second place isn't enough in the end.
That could very well be the case. So we can preview anything we like, but the chances are very big that we won't go to Russia for the World Cup. So I don't think that will happen with either Huntelaar or Bas Dost in the starting lineup, or whoever they choose to put in there.
Yeah.
I think as well, although it's highly likely that the Netherlands will miss a second consecutive major tournament for the first time in the 80s, I think from my point of view, when that draw was made and you're facing difficult away trips to Sofia and to Solna and to Paris, it was a tough group. The same way the qualification for Euro 2016 was quite difficult with Turkey, Czech Republic, and a fantastic generation with Iceland. You would only hope that if the inevitable does happen, that things are put in place by the Dutch FA to make sure that the next qualification round is the one where they don't end up missing 3 in a row, and that they have to start really, really strong and really make it so that it's come hook or by crook that at Euro 2020 that they are present, because that's going to be vitally important.
Our last question comes from Gareth, and he says, do you think that Premier League sides such as Manchester City and Chelsea are harming the development of Dutch players with their loaning of players to Dutch sides? Or is it actually helping Dutch clubs? What do you think, Frank?
I think as long as the Dutch clubs put in the players that are very good, and if they have better Dutch players, they should put in the Dutch player every time, which is happening right now at Vitesse. I already said that a little bit before, but that's a problem. They have Chelsea players, and some of them are not good enough yet to be in the starting 11, so they don't start, and people start to make problems about that in the organization of Vitesse. And but you have NAC, who have very many Manchester City players that are not all very good, but they don't have very good alternatives as well. So they live by those loanees, and well, that's the case, the way it is. And I don't think they are not in the way of the development of Dutch players.
I think it's been a trend, especially in recent years, where clubs in the lower echelons of the Eredivisie have been far too quick to accept potential loans of players that have particularly come from anywhere, not necessarily from Great Britain. I think it's also a trend where British players are coming to the Netherlands in like a swarm, whereas in previous years it was few and far between. But I agree with Frank, quality is the most important thing. if the Dutch players are better than their foreign counterparts, then they must be given a chance. This country, in a domestic sense, has always prized youth, always given youth a chance. And you can see that throughout the division. Even when you go down to the Super League, you see young players coming through. I mean, I spoke to the press officer of Go Ahead Eagles when I interviewed Leon de Gogel last Monday. And I was told by the press officer of Go Ahead Eagles that they have 3 very young players who are from the local area of Deventer that have broke through into the first team. So they're quite proud of that fact. But I agree with Frank. It's about quality is the most important thing.
But yeah, I think if you look at the tests, it does harm the development of players such as Mitchell van Berken. He's the kind of player who needs to be coming off the bench to make those minutes, to get better, to get experience. But instead, Vitesse will bring on someone such as Colquette or Mount, both of them from Chelsea. Those attacking players are, they're taking his chance to come on the pitch. But there are also some benefits of it, like, Vitesse will have extra players. They don't have to go out and buy squad players to thicken out squads. Not that, you don't want a whole squad full of youth players, do you? But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think there's real benefits of all these loan players coming to the Dutch teams, or is it just not necessary?
Not always benefits. At Vitesse, Van Bergen has competition with Rashica, and he's a Vitesse player. He's not a loanee, and he's better than Van Bergen at this moment. So it's not very difficult to set bench for Rashica. But Vitesse has some loanees from Chelsea, not so many, but that are not good enough yet to be in the starting 11. You can't take off Serrero right now because he's one of the best players. He's a key player when Vitesse has the ball, so you can't take him off. And they have Dabo on right back, who's doing quite well so far. But the other players, they have to fight their way into the starting 11. They have a chance, but they have to fight their way in, and that's their learning experience, to fight their way into the starting 11. If they can get their minutes.
I also think, personally, it comes in cycles. I think it comes in cycles of a specific approach from certain clubs that want to enhance their reputation at a certain time, but they want to branch out to attract foreign players, or they're coming away from a youth policy that they once had. I think it's coming in cycles. I think we're seeing over in European football in general. If you look at the results of the Europa League qualifiers and the Champions League qualifiers, the gap between the more established European teams and the smaller teams that not many people have heard of is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think it equates down to approaches from different clubs in different countries. And in the Netherlands, at this precise moment in time, we're seeing swarms of young foreign players coming on loan to places like Vitesse and NAC Breda and even NSA Nijmegen in the past. I think it's Twente. I think it's a trend and it's a cycle, and I don't think it will continue forever. I think it's something which will peter out over time, and then maybe we'll all of a sudden be confronted with a different approach. Yeah, just wanted to say thank Frank for joining us, and to let the readers know that the translation of my article with my interview with Leon de Gogel was approved, and hopefully it should be up on the site ready to read within the next day or two.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Frank, for coming on. We hope you enjoyed joining us on Football-Oranje.
No problem. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.
Yeah. Brilliant. Have a nice evening, Frank.